put down a couple of things.
Go ahead.
You know,
Golly, we're just doing this interview to try to get a little, history of the fire company.
some background, yeah. But, you know, I did think about it. I write down everything on the back of an envelope. But,
Herbert Hughes, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes.
No, I'll move over to it.
Get on it. But every time I talk about the fire company, Bud and John, I talk about the value of the fire company, okay? I think this fire company is one of the strongest volunteer outfits that I've ever seen in the world. And then I say to myself, well, how come it's so strong? And it's because every man, from the time he's a kid, wants to be a fire chief. You know, that's really the strength of this company. And lots of people say, well, you know, you don't have enough guys to be chief. But I say this, that for all the guys that go through a second time and a third time, that just makes the company stronger, because they know how to be chief. And see, when I was chief, there was only 3 slots. There was second assistant, first assistant, and chief. And we all relied on the old chiefs, on the exempt chiefs. You know, they were right there. I remember Leonard Mack, Hubie, Al Robbins. See, Al Robbins was my chief. Al was chief, Billy was first assistant, and I was second assistant. So really, I came up, you know, under Al Robbins. But to me, that's the strength of the. You know, you always got good men coming up that want to be chief. Now, it's true they want to be president and they want to be, you know, a lot of other things in the first days, which is all great, which all enhances it. But you always have youth coming up. And like Frances is going out this morning to the Women's Club. And she's been in it for, 30 or 40 years. And they're dying because young people aren't coming up. And the Elks are complaining, and every volunteer organization tends to complain. But the thing that makes the fire company strong is you always got new men coming up. And like we say, we were going to build, you know, we didn't have any plans like this. We went up and down the hill, and finally, I would say it was around 1950, Herb said, he said to me, he said, look, Charlie, we just don't have the money. So that was that. And if you look in the minutes, that kind of, it just kind of died out. So I was, you know, I was with a life insurance company, but I was also on the investment side. I never really had anything to do with selling life insurance. But I was on the real estate and bonds and stocks, that kind of thing. And at that time, a thing called a leaseback was very popular. Well, you owned a building and then you leased it back. And I thought to myself, now look, we are providing a big service to the town. This is how I sold it to Nice and the council. And if we set it up so that the company owned the building, and it's all ours, but we can't get a mortgage. See, that was another thing. A fire company, which is a volunteer organization, couldn't get a mortgage. We couldn't go down to the bank and say, give us a mortgage, because we were just a volunteer. But if we had the town behind us, and we had the taxing power of the town behind us, they would give the mortgage to a municipality. So I said, okay, let's say, and this was just a ballpark figure, let's say we need $60,000. In other words, we had 20 in the property, and let's say we need another 60,000. And I think we had another 20 in our treasury. What would it cost to service that $60,000 mortgage over a period of 20 years? And by service, I mean pay the interest. I forget, I think it was a 4.5% loan or somewhere around that, and pay it off in 20 years. And that would take about $4,700. So I told the mayor and council, I said, look, that's only a little bit of money. We're talking about $250,000, you know. What's $4,700 a year to service this smokers? And they said, well, you know, that sounds pretty logical, Charlie. So then we did something, and they said, go ahead. Immediately they made me chairman of the building. You know, I was chief, maybe chairman, because I had the idea, right? And this takes nothing away from all the other guys. So we did something that had never been done before. He said, we got to get an architect. And I said, okay, this is a public thing, you know, regardless of how you do it, it's public. We're going to have open bidding among architects to see who's going to be the architect. Normally, you know, you go, somebody has a friend, he says, hey, he's a good architect, we're going to get this guy. Because the architect wasn't open for bids. I said, that's not the way we're going to do it. So we opened it up to see who was going to come in and be the architect for this building. And we had 4 guys came in. One was Kalani, and we said also, before we give you a nickel, we want to see what this firehouse is going to look like. So Kalani came in, Bob Edwards came in, and there were 2 other guys, and I can't remember their name, but they were not big architects, but they had been doing schools and things like that. So I said, you don't get any money until we hire you. See, this is unbelievable. I remember Kalani said to me, I'm a professional. I said, yeah, I know you are, but we're not giving you anything until we see what you're going to give us. You know, sketch it out. I said, sketch it out. So anyway, Kalani and Bob Edwards did that. And Kalani had, I guess he had just architected the shopping center, you know, across the street. And it was a nice firehouse, but it looked like a shopping center. You know, it was a single-story building. And maybe this is still in the records. I don't know whatever happened.
I've never seen anything on it.
But anyway, he sketched out, and it looked just like it was across the street from the shopping center, you know, and it was a single-story building, and basically it looked to me like a shopping center. And then Bob Edwards, he was a Rumson architect. And I'm going to tell you something a little sad about that. But anyway, he came in, and he had a picture that was done by a local artist, see? And it had the 2 wings on. Because we were thinking, we couldn't do it now because we knew it would be too expensive. We were going to put the first aid on the left, and there would be the police department on the right. See? That was the original idea. And then the mayor and council could meet upstairs, which they did for quite a number of years.
I gotta move my car.
Yes.
You wanna cut for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, I'll never forget the first meeting we had, where we had these different drawings, see, from the, or suggestions from the 4 architects. And I should mention who was on, this was all in the papers here, who was on the building committee. The building committee was Bernie Rosenberg, Herb Hawkins came on the committee, he had previously been the chairman, Fred Russell, Matt Baden, Luke Pryor, Emil Jacobisi, Lynn Minton, and me. And anyway, we had the full committee there. They were up in the old firehouse, and we got these 4 suggestions. And Lukey Pryor, who was really a great guy, sees this painting. And he said to me, Charlie, he said, can we build this thing? I said, yeah, Lukey, if we, as a group, decide that Bob Edwards gets the commission. So nobody wanted Kalani, nobody wanted the other 2, who really didn't have an awful lot to present. But Bob Edwards knew how to sell himself. And we all agreed that was the firehouse. But I said, look, we got to chop the wings off, because the wings were on, see. I said, they're not in the deal now. So we all agreed, and that's the picture that wound up in the newspaper. So we took the thing back to to the fire company, and we said, we're recommending that Bob Edwards, and I said it was kind of sad. That was his last commission. He was going blind. But he said, Charlie, he said, I really am glad to get this commission. And we gave it to him. We said, okay, come up with the plans and specs, you know what the specs are, the written stuff, and the plans are the plans, which he did. And then we all agreed that was the firehouse we wanted. So then it went back.
That's odd that they agree on anything.
It was really smooth. No kidding, it was really smooth.
Especially with Lukey.
And, well, when Lukey saw that thing, he said, "You mean we're going to build that thing?"
Well, that pictures are still around. I've seen that.
The little picture.
The painting. No, the painting.
We got
The big painting.
Well, anyway, I don't know whether it was all that big, but
there's a little one somewhere, like that.
with the
Both wings on it. I've seen it.
well, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe it was only little.
No, well, I think Ray Bennett got that.
No,
Well, I don't know. Anyway, somebody got it. I didn't get it. You know, went to the, and I thought, I said to Bob Edwards, could we keep it? And he was going to go down to Florida. He left right after this thing was put together. But anyway, then we put it out to bids. And again, I better look at that. I can't remember whether it was 17 or 27 bids we got on the firehouse. And it was all done very formally. You know, we wrote in the firehouse. Bill Russell was our lawyer, and he was helping to draw the lease up and draw the mortgage and what have you. And the bank said, okay, we'll give you a mortgage. And at that time, we were figuring that the firehouse was going to be around $80,000. I guess Bob Edwards gave us some kind of a ballpark figure. Well, then it was kind of interesting too, and there was a little, not a lot of dissension, but I remember Freddie Russell saying, "Well, Charlie, do you think we ought to build now? Maybe we ought to wait until building costs come down." So I said to Freddie, I said, "Look, Freddie, we got this thing going. We better keep it going." And each guy, you know, was contributing. Emil Jacobisi, you know, he was a banker. And as soon as I told him about this business of financing it with a leaseback, he said, "Yeah, Charlie, I think it would work." So I had a lot of support. And anyway, in a very formal setting up in the firehouse, we opened the bids. And Hemlin came in with the low bid.
Mr. Charlie over here?
This was the father.
Charlie. Old Charlie Hemlin.
Yeah, the son, I don't know, maybe there's another son. But
Well,
the
Charlie
son was
Hemlin would probably be about your age, or a little
well,
older.
he was the son, but it was his father who was
Okay.
still alive. But he was in it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. The guy who was my age was very active in the company, and we knew them to be good builders. So they came in low, and we gave him the bid. He was awarded, all on the up and up, no shenanigans. So then we had a groundbreaking, and there's a picture of the ground.
Yeah, well, that picture's down at the firehouse.
There's a picture of the groundbreaking.
You and your uniform. with the
Yeah,
shovel, yeah.
I just have my hat, I think, or whatever.
Yeah, it was just hat and
And Tommy Carlock's holding a flag, and Joe Frank is holding a flag. Yeah, well, that's it. And we had the groundbreaking, and then we started to build it. Well, I'm telling you, I told you about the clerk of the works. We had firemen there all the time, watching them, putting the cement in, putting it up. That, you know, I don't know. I haven't kept up with all the maintenance on the firehouse, but that house now, you know, 52 from 99. That's 47 years, right? The firehouse is 47 years old, and it's still there.
It's basically in good shape.
Well, for a 47-year-old firehouse.
The only thing that's bad on it is the apron, really. because structurally it's still very sound.
Well, the apron, you know, remember, Little Silver just had to put, and, incidentally, I can't remember his first name, his last name was Lord, who was, after we built the firehouse, let me call him John Lord. He was a banker, and he was, fire commissioner over here in Little Silver. He came over and he asked me how we did it, you know, and what have you. And they built that firehouse after we built ours, and their apron went before ours did. And then they put another piece on that firehouse too. But anyway, yeah, I can't say for 47 years. This house is 35 years old, and I've got 2 roofs on it already. And I'm sure you got a couple of roofs on there.
Well, we've had to replace a lot of slate and stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's just and that's running out of, out of candor too, because there's not too many guys that know how to do that.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well,
the roof, well,
anyway, we thought we had a pretty good building. But I'll tell you a funny story. We got the building up. Well, if Frances was here, she'd tell you about the cornerstone. I guess I told you about that. Some guy who made gravestones in Long Branch said he would donate the cornerstone. So I said, okay, well, will you deliver it? Well, no, you got to come and get it. So Frances and my mother went down there.
I could see this.
Okay? And they hoist this cornerstone into my trunk. I was in New York, right? This is my mother. You remember my mother?
Yeah.
She was an institution around here. And they get it back to the flat and they couldn't get it out, right? Okay. So I don't know how they got it out, but they got it out of the trunk of the car. I'm telling you why we haven't any springs left beyond me, because that's a thick cornerstone. So we got the cornerstone. But this was a Sunday morning. Okay, here's the building is up. But around the building is a ditch, because, you know, you had to dig down for the basement, right? And the whole building committee's there, the town is there, because we're about to take this thing over from the building and pay it. The bank is there, and I guess I said to Hemling, and this was to the son, who was my age. You know, I wasn't all that old back then. Yeah, I was old, but not that old. Let's say I was in 52, I was 37, right? And Charlie Hemley, the son, was about my age. So here were a couple of young guys. And I said, now, Charlie, you're going to fill that all in nice, aren't you? And put sod in, you know, because the little vestibule was there, but there was a ditch around the whole thing, except for the apron. The apron was there. He said, oh no, he said, that's not in the specifications. So I looked at Bob Edwards, and I said, hey Bob, is it in the specs? And he looked at me and he said, no. So I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was going to cost like $2,000 to put this around. And we had put 20 grand in with the mortgage to make the 84,000. And you know, you're going to have to check on these numbers. I don't know whether they are in the minutes, because Russ Minton looked through the minutes, but this is the way I recollect it. And I think they're pretty good numbers. So here we're all standing here. You know, you talk about Hubie. He's sitting there just like you. He's got this gorilla face.
Steam coming out his ears.
Steam coming out of his ears. And we can't take this building over because, let's say it's $2,000. So I said to Bob Edwards, you mean it wasn't in the specs? He said, Charlie, I missed it. It wasn't in the specs. And Henry wanted his $2,000. So I said, gee, everybody's here. It's a big ceremony, you know, we put the flags up and what have you. And I said, well, we the building committee, we have to go into the closet. So we went in the back closet, into the building committee. And I said, look, and we had Bob Edwards with us. I said, look, we got a beautiful building here. It was built the way you guys wanted it. You got the right cement and bricks and everything in it. My suggestion is we go back and ask Hemling. Hemling wasn't there, see? and say, we'll split it with you. We'll pick up $1,000 and you pick up $1,000. So out we come. And I just assumed it didn't need fire company approval to spend another $1,000.
Oh, gee.
And I said,
Even back then, right, we had
oh,
this
yeah,
problem.
oh yeah, I'm telling you, there was no graph, no nothing. And I looked at Charlie Hemley and I said, look, Charlie, I said, we got a beautiful building, you did a great job, and I'm schmoozing him, and he did. I thought they did a good job. And I said, can we split it? He put his hand out and he said, you got a deal, Charlie. And that was it. And that was the only wrinkle that we had in the acceptance of the building.
Unbelievable.
Who was gonna fill that ditch in?
$84,000, what,
Yeah.
50 years ago,
It was a lot of money.
well, damn right it was,
It was a lot of
$1,000 was a lot of money.
And I, you know, I don't mean to single out Freddie Russell, but I remember him saying, you know, Charlie, those building costs might come down. I said, I think we better build it while we can.
I guess so.
Yeah. But that basically is the, you know, is the way it was financed, and what happened was then, as you know, the bank was satisfied because the town was paying the rent on what we would call a lease back. And we said to the town, in 20 years, if you still want to hold meetings upstairs, you can. And I don't know whether you remember they had a kind of a bowed table that they did use for a while. But then, you know, Bud often kids me, he said, you know, Charlie, you were there like into the 60s, and then I guess I kind of got out, I wasn't quite as active for a couple of reasons. And I've done this in other situations too. You know, I was chairman of the board of the Monmouth Museum, and we built the children's wing, and I believed in what was called the gap theory, that if the old guys didn't kind of disappear, you were around forever. You know, I could still be chairman of the board of the Monmouth Museum, but when I was 75, I said, that's enough. And I did that with the Water Supply Authority. You know, I was chairman of the you know, Kane appointed me to the Water Supply Authority for the building of the Manasquan Reservoir. That was a $110 million job. And when it was done, I said, look, I think the younger people should start taking it over. I was 75, and Florio reappointed me. But I said, I think it's time for me to get out. Well, it so happened that we built the firehouse in '52. And see, I went to college at night. I never went during the day. So I was commuting, and I got 3 degrees out of it. When I got out of the Navy, I was on the GI Bill. See, so Uncle Sam was paying my tuition. But then I got my doctorate in '53. See, that was my 3rd degree. And as soon as I got my doctorate, the chairman of the finance committee at NYU, at New York University, said, well, we'd like you to teach at night, which I did then for another 11 years. And I was always teaching on Monday night. I was teaching Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. So, you know, although I was secretary of the Relief Association, and I could handle that, when they made me trustee, I said, gee, I can't make the meetings on Monday night. So this guy kids me, and he said, you kind of disappeared. I really didn't disappear. My heart was always in the fire company, but I just, you know, I was teaching at night.
There's
And I was
only
working all
so
day.
much you could get into a 28-hour day, you know?
Well, it took me, I went to school at night for 27 years at NYU, counting when I was teaching. So, but that's kind of the story of how we financed it. And I come right back again to the way we started, in a sense that, you know, this was not any one guy.
No, nobody's ever claimed that.
This boy, you know, this was in '52, you know, that I said this. I was really impressed with guys like George Kirchin and Charlie Cross and John Wagner. And John Wagner was he was a super guy. but he was known as a pretty bristly guy, you know. You weren't gonna get anything past him. But he just came right on board. He said, Charlie, this is sound. And I have to come back to say that it's the strength of the Fairhaven Fire Company that built this thing. So that takes you from the time we started to build it
Till we got the ditch filled in.
till we got the ditch filled in. This is my idea. Okay. Build with Fairhaven in 1952. This was an ad we took out, for the fair. George Cutchin was kidding me. He said, boy, that'll get him. But we had a very successful fair in 52. But we kind of made it. And I remember, too, when we'd go places with the fire trucks, we would put up billboards, if we went to Trenton or we went someplace to a fair where we would advertise that we were building a building.
No, I think that what they did was fantastic, and I have to agree. A lot of it's the people that are in it, because we might have arguments up on the floor, but when the fair time comes, and, everybody's there and everybody does what they have to do, and they all bitch, but I mean that's life.
Sure. No. But it really, I wrote these things down. The lease was $4,700. Borrowed 64,000. We put another 20 in. And then there was another thing that we used to sell the town. Not only that it would have been costly, if we had to pay firemen, but Russ Minton went back over all the minutes of the fire company. See, he was treasurer. And he figured out that we had spent $110,000 over the years before on equipment and stuff like that we had given the town. So that all helped to sell the whole project.
In all the time I've been in here, I'm a comer in this. Well, you was on the investigating committee when I come in.
Right.
And
I voted for you.
Thank you.
He said, how's he gonna climb a ladder? I said, the hell with the ladders.
Right, believe me, he can climb. I've been there with him.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
No, it's everybody involved in everything. And, even when they did the wing on it, the first aid wing, that was just as I was coming in the fire.
Right.
And we used to knock on doors for that.
Sure.
And the first year I was in there, they knocked on doors. And Luggie was the chairman, and I'm telling you, we used to have some Lulus, because we had to go back and write to everybody to give us a donation.
Sure.
And I can't understand your writing and all this and that, but, I wanted to talk to you about it, because, I don't know how much Emil knew, or, I know Emil was on the committee, and Emil said that, everybody had a lot to do with nobody was out of it.
Sure.
And I didn't know, I knew George Kirchin only because of the Episcopal Church.
Right.
Because he was on the building committee.
Well, see, he didn't want to follow Art Sickles in the sense that he would be, the president forever. So I said, well, gee, George, I thought it was 2 years.
Who was after him? Was Al Robbins after him?
Gee, that I can't.
I kind of think that it was Al Robbins after George, and Al told me way back that it got to be a 1-year term for 3 years.
Oh, yeah, you had to be elected.
Every year.
Oh, yeah, you weren't.
Not automatic for 3 years. No, I didn't mean you meant that.
All I meant was, no, you had to be elected every year. But you couldn't, I'm pretty sure when I said to George, would you take it, that I said, you can only run once more. You'll only succeed yourself once. But my memory could be wrong, it could be twice. But anyway, we limited the term, so that, see, because he was afraid if he took it, and
he'd still be there.
And, yeah, he'd still be there. I guess he's dead now, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he's dead.
Yeah.
No, because I'm quite sure that when Al told me, and when Al, and I wasn't in the fire company, but when Al got out as president, he said...
No, I know who was president. No, he wasn't right after. After George Kirchin was Len Mack.
As soon as it could be, it's up on the board up there, we
That-
got the president.
Len Mack, I remember now. And after Len Mack, Herb Hawkins was president. All the older guys were president first, before, I'm pretty sure, because I had a picture of me going out as chief. And I was in the picture, and Bob Matthews was my first assistant. And Bob is there, and he's getting his badge. I got my ex-chief's badge, and Bob Matthews got his chief's badge, and Herb Hawkins is standing there. He's the new president.
I didn't know her.
And Len Mack is in this picture as the president of the fire company.
You was never president.
He was president of the
You
fire.
was never president.
No, I was never president of the fire. No, because see, I was teaching. Well, I don't know whether they would have made me president, but you know, I wouldn't want to be presumptuous. No, see, that's why I was kind of trying to. I'm not trying to explain it. I was just, you know, they asked me once I got my doctorate, would I teach? And,
You gotta do what you gotta do.
and I did, yeah, and you know, and then I was a visiting professor down at the University of Puerto Rico, where the finance department head from the University of Puerto Rico had come up and taken my course, and then when he was finished, he went to the chairman of my department, and he said, gee, I'd like Dr. Moeller to come down and install his course at the University of Puerto Rico. So Francis and I went down there then, and I gave 6 lectures over a couple of week period, and installed the course. But it was, yeah, it was a new, kind of a new career for me. But I was still working at the Met, you know, all day long. But that was one of the reasons I just couldn't get to the fire company meetings anymore. But Herb Hawkins was president when I went out. And you know, I kid, I said, when am I going to get a horn?
Well, they started with Artie
They
Bennett.
started that later.
Artie Bennett. Wally Bennett was president, he started it with Artie.
Yeah,
And he started it with, what, a $60 horn?
yeah.
And by the time I was chief 5 years later, it was $360.
Let me tell you a funny story.
Probably more than that right now.
Yeah, let me tell you a funny story about when I was chief. This was before the police department had 3 shifts, okay? I've told you this story many
I don't know,
times.
maybe you did.
Okay. The police department only had 2 shifts. So from midnight, and they, of course, received all the fire calls. They put the, you know, they had a box
Right.
with
Yeah,
the
they put the
wheels,
wheel in.
okay? So from 12 midnight to 8 in the morning, the chief had the box up in his bedroom, and we were given a special phone. And I forget who the electrician was, but he put a hole in the wall, yay big. I bet it was an inch hole. Right from the outside to bring this cable in, see, and then on the wall of our bedroom, this is in Hager's Lane, we had this box with all the wheels, all of the brass wheels. And somebody had to tend that all the time, obviously, from 12 to 8 in the morning. And then came the time when you weren't chief anymore, okay? So the box had to go out, right? So the electrician came, I wish I could remember his name, he was an old timer. You know, once you got a job in Fairhaven, you had it until you died.
It's still that way.
And anyway, he came in, he said, "Get this box out." I said, I looked through the holes and it right up into the field. I said, what about those holes? Oh, I'll fix those. He takes a cork. Whang. He says, I'm going outside. He said, I'm going to put the ladder up. Puts another cork. And that's the way they left me, with the corks. So as I say, I got an ex-chief's badge and 2 corks in the holes.
Well, you want to hear something funny, they paid for your phone now. I don't know if they still do.
They paid for our phone.
Yeah, well,
For the fire company phone, they paid.
well, no, they paid for my telephone, the person's telephone each month.
Oh, I see.
So January, well, I says, well, I can't pay for that because that's the December last year's bill. Okay, I said, okay.
Yeah.
So to come to January the following year, I hands him the bill in January. He said, "Oh, I can't pay that bill." He said, "Because you're not chief anymore." So instead of getting 12 months, I only got 11.
So you got stuck, huh?
But
Well-
I don't even know if they do that anymore.
Probably not.
I really have no
Well,
idea.
your phone bill, you know, it's not that big a deal anymore.
No.
But they gave us, you know, this was a separate phone. This was a
Yeah.
separate-
Oh, yeah.
There was a number. Well, did you guys get that? Did you have the?
No.
No, there was a,
No,
That was gone by
I
then.
think when we were chief, we were off electrons and everything.
right,
When I was chief, I bought the first portable radio that they had.
I see.
And boy, did Carl give me the business about that. Listening to the police calls and all this and that and everything. Any interesting fires when you was chief?
Yeah. And this is nothing to brag about, I guess. Everybody who was chief, okay, wanted to emulate Barney Eglin. Barney Eglin, so far as I know, is the only chief.
He's the big one on Grange Avenue, right?
Who, Barney?
Barney?
No,
Barney never had a fire, did
he
he?
had zero.
He never had a fire.
Well, he
Okay.
had a couple of grass fires.
Yeah.
He never had any damage, any whatsoever. So along comes me, okay? And this is in February of '52. And I kind of had the flu. No, I wasn't feeling so hot. And we got an alarm, and it was the Rice estate. And that was at the foot of Fairhaven Road, which was the old Pearl Street. And he had a mansion. You know, he was in the glove business, I think. And they were in Florida. And boy, this was a big house. And my recollection was that the damage was somewhere around $35,000. So I had the dubious distinction of being the fire chief. You know, everybody had to submit a report, and Russ Minton was the fire commissioner at that time. He was on the council. He was also the treasurer of the fire company. But I remember in my report to Russ Minton, I had this big fire. We had another one on Fairhaven Road, but I'll tell you, talk about support. I can remember going into that building, a couple of things. Len Mack was right on my elbow. You know, he was, Len Mack was, he was something with
County Marshal.
Yeah, County Marshal. Well, I'm telling you, he stuck with me like glue. And I remember being on the third floor. Incidentally, this fire started in the attic. We were up on the third floor, and boy, we were really choking. And the two of us are hanging out the window. We didn't have any packs or anything. You know, we were just trying to tell everybody what to do. And I remember hanging out the window, and Bob Van Brunt, another solid fireman, okay? He'd been an ex-chief. He's down on the ground, and our pumper's pumping, and, you know, we're trying to put this thing out. He said, "Hey, Charlie, should I call Red Bank?" I said, "Yeah, call Red Bank." I'll never forget that. And he put the call in for Red Bank, and Red Bank came. And Bob Matthews, and I'm putting this on tape, and he might not,
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
he might not want to be brought in, but I'll never forget, it was a slate roof. And we had to go out on a roof, we had to ventilate, okay? We had to get a hole in the roof. And Bob Matthews was higher than I was. And I had my foot in the gutter. And this was February, it was freezing, okay? And that slate roof was really slippery. And Bob Matthews started to slide. And as he came down, I grabbed him. We're 3 stories high. Now, whether he would have stopped in the gutter or not, neither of us knows, but I gripped him before. We both figured he was going right off the edge. But it seemed like, and I don't know whether we ever really determined what caused the fire, but they had a big electric train set up in the attic. I mean a big one. And we think it was probably some kind of a short or something that started the fire. But when Rice was told about it, I'll tell you, Red Bank and our guys were really terrific. While we were up fighting the fire, you know, I was right in the middle of it. Oh, I always remember that guy?
Oscar?
No,
Carl?
Carl. He was a big hustler.
No, I know Carl, I grew up with him.
He was brand new in the fire company, right? And he comes up to me and he said, Charlie, I'm brand new. What should I do? I just stick with me. Well, this was after I was up there with Len Mack. And I had come down. I was up and down the stairs. And I'm up and down the stairs because I was trying to be cheap. You know, I was trying to do what I had to do. And at the end, he said, I'm worn out. I said, what do you want out for? He said, I've been galloping up and down the stairs with you. He said, you never told me what to do except stay with you. Well, you know, we had a lot of guys there. We had Paul Fairhaven and that was dark. And anyway, we put the fire out. But that was my biggest fire. Then we did have another one on River Road down the opposite Schwenkers. That was relatively, not relatively small, but I think it was $5,000 or $7,000 in damage. So I kind of had the ringer. I had, serious fires. But we got them out, and in both cases we got letters, and donations, because we were covering stuff. With rice, we brought tarps in, and because we had a lot of water, which was running down the stairway, and we covered stuff, and they were very appreciative, and the insurance companies, were appreciative. So we didn't do a bad job. It's just that.
That's basically what they do now. I mean, if the guy goes in with a hose, there's a guy in back of him that's got a
Oh
tarp.
yeah.
I mean, that's SOP right now.
And then not only that, but we asked, and another time this was an innovation because it was a big fire. I said, look, we're going to keep the patrol there. I said, we'll put the pumper back in the ladder truck back in the firehouse. But we're going to put the patrol, or leave the patrol there, and see if we can't get some guys to stand by, because we were afraid. The thing, what always bothered me as chief, one of the worst things is to have a fire and then have it flare up.
You got it, very embarrassing.
And have nobody there. And this thing was up 3 stories high,
I remember the house.
Do you remember?
Oh, sure.
I always remember Mr. Rice riding on his horse down Fairhaven Road. He would then go out over the fields. But they were the fires I had, and I always, I guess I had an interest in firematics. Every time I would see a book, these are kind of picture books. This is the romance of firefighting, and this is Great Fires of America. This is fire engines and firefighting. How do you like that for a
Beauty.
fire truck?
They did the job.
And this one was fire engines and firefighting. And I told my grandchildren they can have these books, otherwise I'd give them to you guys. Excuse me. But I am going to give you this. How are we doing?
Oh, no. You've got the doctor appointment.
Yeah, I do. I really ought to call quits around 11:30. What time is it?
Oh, it's only 10:30 now.
Oh, that's good. But for the record, this was the Red Bank. This was the Esbury Park Press. That's the picture of the firehouse. These are the headlines. Fairhaven Fire Company going ahead with plans for an $80,000 building, we called it then. And then this was another one from the Long Branch Record, 80,000 to go into the firehouse.
It's funny, you're talking 80,000 on that. When they put that addition on, the first aid addition, that cost them over 60,000.
Yep.
And that ain't half the building.
There goes the clip someplace. Anyway, and then this was 80,000 firehouse plan for the new firehouse. And then it went to 84,000. Well, that's when we got the bid, 84,000. And but I thought this was good. Oh, then this is this interview, from the Red Bank Register. And they were most of this is online. And here we are breaking ground. Fairhaven approved lease with the fire company. Will pay $4,700 per year for use of the new building. And this was when we had the flags, and we I put a number on these if you need the number. And then this was a letter I sent in to the Red Bank Register because they were so good in following this thing. You know, I commented on, I wrote this little editorial. I commented on how well they treated us because they did. Here's a letter from Malcolm Forbes. He was running for governor at that time. He says, "Dear Chief Moeller, just a note to congratulate you on your new firehouse. I also send my congratulations and best wishes to your volunteer firemen and the building committee who did so much to make this new building possible. With warmest regards, sincerely, Malcolm Forbes." Well, see, I kept saying, you know, not one guy. It's a lot of guys that did this. And this was the thing. I wrote this ad. This was an ad we had in the Red Bank Register, filled with Fairhaven in 1952, and they really supported us well on the fair. And this is the last one, the cornerstone set at the firehouse in Fairhaven. And see, there's Ed DeNice, Leonard Mack, and that's I in I had my uniform on in '52, and that was the firehouse. That's the firehouse. But you know, that's really
Beautiful.
I don't think of anything else I might add.
Did you give any thought to the change of the hats? I've got them traced to 52 in the picture
Yeah.
where everybody wore the round hats.
Oh yeah, no, we had. I can tell you, we had the hats that you use to break windows with, and they were the hats that came down over the back. You're talking about?
Well, we're talking about the helmet.
Fire hats. We're talking about the dress hat.
Of the dress hat.
Yeah. The dress hat. See, you're wearing what we call a pot.
Oh.
The bell helmets. The
And-
bell hats.
See, the round.
You mean the dress hat? Oh, I thought you meant. I thought you meant.
No, nothing.
The firefighting hat.
You had New Yorkers in them days.
We had the ones with the great big thing. You know, I remember the reason we had them. Boy, your collar. I can remember one fire, and this was when I was a fireman. There was a dump next to the old firehouse. Maybe you remember. It was right next to George Kirchin's place.
Vaguely.
And we were putting the hose down into the dump to put the fire out, and it was hot. I mean, it was a summer day, and the darn thing exploded. We all had boots on, and we had no coats on, which we should have had on, but we had our boots on, and the cinders came up and went down in our boots. And I'm telling you, we had to get our boots off fast because. Remember the boots were, well, I guess we had them folded down so that we never never did that again. We always wore coats even though you'd die in those coats. But I remember that fire, that really had, you know, I was just a fireman then. We had a fire. Yeah, I can remember another one, and that was when Billy Robbins was fire chief, and that was the explosion up in Fifth Amboy. And the reason I remember it was because I was first assistant chief, and I was living in Hager's Lane, but we had a road that came out opposite the Red Church, and. Anyway, I beat Billy Robbins. It was at night, and you know he was not on duty as a cop. I guess he was a captain then. And I beat Billy Robbins to the pumper. And they called, Rumsfeld was gonna take over for us. They called for us to bring the pumper and the patrol. So I forget who was driving, and I was basically the chief, because I was first assistant. And we were making a corner at Fairhaven Road and River Road. And Billy Robbins said, "I want the pumper." I'm chief. So he kicked me off the pumper. And I got the patrol. And we went up there. And there was live ammunition up there. I forget all the details of it, but I remember Billy pulling the pumper in, and I'm pulling the patrol behind him. And we did use both of them to wet things down. But my memory is vague on exactly what happened. But we were called up anyway. They said, "You guys come up." And I can remember another the Satter Fire. And that was the Saddle Lumber Fire. We were on West Street, and we pumped all night. I'm telling you, again, if I had to guess when the fire was, let's say it was around midnight, and I was not chief, I don't think. I might have been second assistant. But we stayed there all night pouring water from West Street onto that Saddle Fire, because the Blaisdell,
Right.
lumber company was right in back. Maybe you guys remember that. But I always remember it because 6 o'clock in the morning, I said, "Look, I gotta go to work," and the fire was out. But the pumper was still there, but the patrol took us back. And when I got dressed, boy, I was on a 7 o'clock, I was dressed and showered and shaved, and I was on a 7 o'clock train to New York. Yeah.
Tough schedule.
Well, they were tough fires, but they were not our fires, they were somebody else's fires.
It seems like that neighborhood. But I walked that path a couple of times.
Is that right?
We was pumping on Shrewsbury Avenue in one of them. But it was front of Becker's hardware store. We was pumping.
Oh, the old Becker hardware store?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that store.
And it was
there all the time.
It was snowing. It was ice.
Yeah,
And the road had a crown on it.
right.
So Johnny says, "Well, let's go up and see," because I was cheaper one of the line, and he was in back of me. I bet you I fell 10
Oh,
times.
you followed Bud, did you, John?
Yeah, there was one in between us. Cookie was in between us.
Hey, you ought to be sitting here sometime and let me do that.
No.
I fell going down that road more times. John picked me up. And finally, I said, "Just drag me down there." I had to drag him by the car.
Well, I got to tell you a funny story about the fair, too. Well, we don't need that. But, the fairs really are what helped make the fire company. There's no question about it. And this was a very covetous situation with the fairs. And, I was new in the company, and I guess George Kitchen kind of liked me and so forth. And the first job I had in the fair was at the paddles. You don't have the paddles anymore, do you?
Nobody knows how they work. We got them.
Well, we had the paddles, okay? So I was just brand new, and I went in and I worked on the paddles. And I did that for a year or so, and then all of a sudden, George Kirchin said to me, "Charlie, the doll booth is open, okay? Remember that? Do you still have the doll booth?"
We don't have any now. All we got is stuffed animals.
Oh, okay.
So basically,
Well, see, George Kirchin and Leonard Mack and Russ Minton used to go shopping on 23rd Street in New York every year. There were a lot of toy stores. I think they're all gone now. And they would buy all these toys. And anyway, in a doll booth, you got a $5 doll, a big doll. I was a big doll then. If you hit the star. And you got a kind of like a rag doll if you hit otherwise. That was like $1 price, okay? So George Kirchin said to me, "Charlie, would you take the doll booth?" I looked at him. Hell, I went to doll booth for. It was like the pits. And it wasn't a real good, it was right at the edge, right at the street.
Right.
Because, you know, we were in the old fairgrounds, which meant that people would go right by it. It wasn't a good money maker. And here's me. I'm in charge of the dolls. Well, I was in charge of that booth for about an hour and a half, I guess. There was a liquor store. Do you remember? Remember Stadler's? Right on that corner of his property was a liquor store. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
It was right on the edge of the fairgrounds. You know
Where the Willowbrook was?
Where the Willowbrook was.
Okay.
You know, you went into Stadler's, right?
Okay.
Was it Stadler? Stadler, yeah. And you went in from River Road. Well, that corner of Stadler's building was a liquor store.
Right.
So there were a couple of guys working in the doll booth, and I rustled up George Kirchin. I said, George, let's see now. The big dolls are $5, right? I said, the little dolls are worth $1. He said, right. I said, a bottle of booze is worth $5. This was, you know, you could get a bottle of scotch or a bottle of rye, $5. He said, right. I said, a bottle of wine is $1. He said, right. I said, you and I are going over and we're going to get cases of liquor. And we're going to set the bottles of liquor in between the dolls. So we went over and we had some guys with us. And we got 2 cases of wine and we got 2 cases of hard liquor. A case of scotch and a case of whatever. And we had a case of red wine and a case of white wine. And we took this stuff, and this was, you know, I had to be careful that guys didn't steal it. So we took the bottles of liquor and the bottles of wine and we stood them in between. Well, boy, business just opened right up. It was amazing. We just changed that doll booth into a moneymaker.
Right now, they got so much problems with the state.
Oh, you couldn't do this now.
You have to be licensed by the state in order to sell.
Listen, we couldn't do this now for love of money.
I mean, even well, you can't give liquor away. We got in trouble we used to get in trouble with the fairs because every fireman's night they showed up, we'd give them a case of beer.
Yeah.
And somebody found out we was giving the booze away, you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've clamped down so much on this.
Oh, we couldn't do this
No.
today. We couldn't.
You could go up on New York and buy stuff.
This was, I would say this was like in 1948. You know, I don't even know whether I was in the
Well,
chief.
when was the first time that the state stepped in here? I know Little Silver got in a lot of trouble. It was around 48, 49, I think.
Well,
I had just got back from Florida.
we did it, I know, until 52. Because I remember Carl Jacobisi coming around, and he said to me, are we allowed to do this show? I said, yeah, sure. So then he said, well, now look, he said, watch the kids. Because he said, you know, make sure if the kids won,
They get the doll.
they either get a doll or they bring their parents, and you give the liquor to the parents, which we did, which was good advice. But not only that, but because, you know, we just had curtains on the front of the booth, we had to put all this liquor back in the cases, and we had to lug it over to George Kirchin's office every night and keep it there. I remember one night, Mike Procopa and I said, hey Mike, stay here. We better count these bottles, because we were just going to go into George's. I was afraid somebody was going to get in the booth, you know, and steal the liquor. So Mike and I both counted the bottles.
Put the fox in the hen house.
Yeah, that was interesting. But it made the doll booth a moneymaker. Yeah.
Well, I can remember back looking at minutes in 1904, 1905, because they run a fair way back then. I don't know how many days they run. But they reported a profit of $12.50. I mean, I don't know whether they only run it one afternoon or what. But I can remember some of that.
Well, see, they had the Players Club, you know, which was a theatrical club, and they used to help the fire company. And I remember they had a big dance floor.
I can remember the
Remember the
dance.
dance floor?
That's up
And
to
I can
dance.
remember when Wally Bennett, now this was in a new firehouse. I had two sons who were drummers, and this was when my son Pete was, he was a drummer in Red Bank Catholic, you know. And Wally Bennett was president. And this was in the new, we still had the dance floor. So Wally said to me, hey, your son is a drummer, doesn't he have a band? I said, yeah. He said, well, can we get him? I said, yeah. So they got the band, and every time the band would be on, all the people would go to the dance floor. So Wally said to me, he said, hey, you better tell your son not to play any, so much. And they didn't. And then Pete, of course, went to the Navy. He was in for 6 years, and then he went with public service, and he's down in Salem. So I really never had a son who could go into the fire company. Although my younger son, Tom, who's over in Shrewsbury, he was interested, and then he got MS. So that blocked him out. But he just lost his job. Can you imagine that?
With who?
My son Tony.
With who?
He had been originally with Citibank, and then they were bought by an investment outfit. It was an investment arm. And now that, and he was a partner. He was a vice president and a partner. And but see, he has MS, and he was working out of his office at home over in Shrewsbury a lot, because he couldn't commute. He wobbles a lot, and the trouble with his balance. And this was just before Christmas.
Wow.
It was, his outfit was, he got caught in a merger. Invesco bought it, and they're a $250 billion company, and his company was like a $20 billion company. So they merged a lot of the guys, and they gave him a good package, but he got to find another job. He's got 3 kids. Right before Christmas, can you believe it? But that's why he has often said, he enjoys the fire company, so he enjoys going to the fair, but he can't go on or anything. So, but I'll tell you, I look at the guys, and I think it's 4 generations that we're looking at sometimes. And,
3 at least.
3 at least.
Moeller got, Jackie's got what, 3?
4.
4?
Probably 4.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm talking about the older guys like me, or even the next generation of, we could be the first sons.
Mine is 3.
Yeah, you got 3, right? Yeah.
Phoenix is 3.
I thought there was some, Emil and I, Emil really goes back earlier, because I think Emil was one of the first that went to Monmouth College, but it was a 2-year college. I think he said he was in the first graduating class.
No. Well, Emil's a talent.
Yeah.
He was another one we want to interview.
Yeah, we'll get him.
We want to get
He was a kid, yeah.
Jim Connor, we want to get Dick Fetterman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we just didn't do this when we had the Hendrickson boys and Art Davison and them guys, I often said we should, but we never did.
I dropped the ball with Jim Acker and a couple of the other guys, but, hey.
But I remember, you mentioned Art Davison. He was our first custodian. Yeah. And he was really good at it.
You can definitely tell he's not there, believe me.
Well, immediately there was the question, who was going to be the custodian. And Art was right there with me. He was, talk about clerk of the works. He really was good when we were building the firehouse. And Art and I kind of clicked. I guess he was he ever chief? Yeah. I guess he was chief. And of course his son Lou was there too.
Lou was never chief.
No.
His brother was chief, right?
Right. But anyway, Art said to me, he said...
we have to take a pause here. Okay.
Okay. But Art said to me, he said, Charlie, we're going to need a paid custodian here. And he had just finished his job. I looked at him, I said, John, Art, I said, you're the custodian. I gave him the job, just like that. I don't know whether somebody else wanted the job or not, but I figured the heck with it, I guess I was feeling my brass, and I said, Art, you got it. And he was a good,
No, he was there when I first came in.
he was good.
Art and I hit it off pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always.
Well, he knew how to handle people, he wasn't obnoxious.
No, he was a gentleman.
He was a gentleman. He really was, yeah.
Right now, they got a mess going on.
You do have a custodian though, don't you?
You get the borough's hired some girl that comes in there, what, twice a week or once a week?
Once a week, maybe.
No.
She comes in and just cleans up, but I mean, nobody takes care of the equipment and the engine room
Yeah.
and things of that nature. Like
Yeah.
Bart used to.
Well, you got a lot of stuff there,
Oh,
too.
terrible. It's a full-time, part-time job for somebody. Buddy had it there
I
for
had
a
it,
while.
Jack McQueen had it,
Uh-huh.
Dick Conk had it.
And you didn't want to keep up with it?
No, I kinda got in a mess with somebody, so.
Oh.
They did away with the job. They hired a
There's nobody doing any mechanical work down there now.
Well,
There's
that's-
nobody doing any
yeah.
maintenance work as far as the equipment is concerned. If something goes wrong, Steve comes down and fixes it.
Right.
There's nobody there to say, hey Charlie, the bulb's out on this truck,
Right.
no, you gotta go get Steve and do it.
Or the
for that.
batteries. Do you still have those big batteries on the lamps or not? No, huh?
Well, no, they got halogen lights now, they're all self-charging.
I always remember those
Yeah,
big
they're my
batteries that they
They're my
had?
lights.
Then we lived on Lewis Lane too, in back of the firehouse. You remember that, when you were a Boy Scout, we had a rifle range. I don't know, tell that story. That had nothing to do with fire company. But,
They had all kinds of good things growing up. It's a shame that the kids today don't have
yeah.
half of what we had as children.
Well, my son Peter, he was in the subs, he was in the nuclear power subs. But he was always mechanical, and they would have these bells, and they'd need batteries, so they'd go down to Art Davison, and Art would be changing the lights, as soon as the lights went dim, he'd take the batteries off. They kind of clipped on the bottom of the light. And my son would say, well, now, isn't this battery kind of dead? And Art would say, yeah, I was going to throw it away. And Peter would come home with the battery. And they'd still have enough juice, to run a bell and that kind of thing. But, yeah, we had, well, do you remember the rifle range we had down the cellar? Well, anyway, see, I was chairman of the troop committee for Troop 8 when your dad was the scoutmaster. This was down in St. James, okay, Troop 8. And anyway, we had a cellar that had, this was in Lewis Lane, that had a part crawl space. And I got 2 sheets of heavy metal. This was I guess the sheets were 4 by maybe 3. And I mounted them in the crawl space on an angle. And these sheets of metal were at least a quarter to 3/8 inch thick. And we would stand at one end of the cellar with a .22, okay, and shoot. We'd hang a target up and shoot, and then the bullets would hit this metal thing and go into the sand, okay. So I was chairman of the troop committee, but everybody kind of had other things. I helped. We used to take the kids down to, was it Asbury Park or Long Branch? It had that inside pool.
That's
Asbury.
Mediterranean.
Right, yeah, get them their merit badges for swimming. Well, anyway, I had the .22 so the kids could get target shooting. So the kids are in there target shooting. It was in the summertime. And first thing you know, Billy Robbins comes down. He was captain. Okay. He said, hey Charlie, he says, the neighbors are complaining they're hearing gunshots. And you know, Billy was, I said, yeah. He said, well, what are you using? I said, the .22. He said, well, what kind of ammunition you got? I said, it's wax. He said, look at these things. I took one of the bullets and I ran my finger over with lead, Yeah. I said, look, Billy, this is wax. And I said, no, you can't hurt anything with that. Oh, Billy looks at me. He She said, I said, don't tell the neighbors.
Cat Willie Woodbang.
But that's how, you know, and I was careful, boy, with that rifle. I was right there with the kids. I made sure that they had it pointed at the targets.
It worked well.
It did, yeah.
You know, I can remember Troop 8 because I was in 23 on the Baptist church.
Oh, were you? Yeah. Well, we didn't have much money, but we had a lot of fun.
Well, we did too.
The rich troop was Fairhaven. They had all the tents and everything.
Doc Stewart.
Yeah.
But Red Bank Troop is still up. I don't know about Fairhaven.
I think it is still up, yeah. That's
It's
right.
still there.
Our troop was one of the first ones to get a 50-year around there, 23.
Right,
They
right.
disbanded.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story, and you can maybe remember this. We met in the KSC building on the corner of Monmouth Street. No, Monmouth and, no, this was
In Red Bank.
in Red Bank, yeah.
Upstairs over Woolworth.
Right, but it was on the corner. You know, where the bank is. Well, it's right next to Woolworth. Wasn't it?
I thought it was over Woolworth.
I thought it was kind of toward the corner. But anyway, it was,
All right,
it
upstairs.
was upstairs, yeah. So it was a big hall, okay? And we got the right to use it every Friday night. And they had a big carpet, big rug, beautiful rug. And we would play steal the bacon. We'd play steal the bacon until we had a hole in the middle of the rug.
We used to play smugglers in the dark.
They weren't happy about that.
Church.
Yeah, we used to play steal the bacon. Well, that's not fire company. I don't know what else I can say about the fire
Charlie,
company.
it's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, the tape is just about out.
Okay.
It's been a fantastic time.
Charlie, I loved every minute of it. I really want to thank you for taking the time to do
Oh,
this.
no, listen, I guess I will always have paramedics in my heart.
Well, you know, and I can remember, I was sergeant of arms, and they got talking about life members, and I said, well, God damn it, they should have got some of these old Leonard Mack. Leonard Mack is honorary life member of a dozen fire companies around here, and he's life member of his own.
Yeah.
So Leonard was proposed, and you were proposed, and I know there should have been more, but I feel this way. The guys in your time should have done it, not the guys in my time.
Well, I don't know whether we had.
Oh, yes, you did.
I guess we could, yeah.
Bert and Eddie was the first one, and that was in 27.
Yeah,
Art Sickles is a life member,
yeah.
you know. I just think that you and Leonard and some of these guys should have done a hell of a lot.
Well, I
Been
guess
proposed a
we
lot
should
before.
have, yeah, but, you know, we were busy doing firehouses.
Well, that's one of the reasons you should have been a life member.
Yeah.
But anyway, you are, and I know you're
Well,
very proud of that. And
I
you're
appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I always wear that pin.
I know you
Rather
do.
than getting old. But I appreciate, you know, it was interesting, the 55-year pin is silver. Did you know that?
I have no
No,
idea.
they were all, I think they were all silver. Mine was silver also.
Were they? Yeah.
Well, I know some of them, the 35-year pin is gold.
Oh,
From what I have.
yeah, my.
I don't know.
I don't think the color is synonymous with any.